There is an invisible war being waged against your potential, and the most terrifying part is that you have been trained to fight on the wrong side. Every time you dim your light to make others comfortable, every time you silence your ambitions to fit into the acceptable mold, you are not being humble, you are being harvested. The system does not fear your failure, it fears your awakening. Let that truth settle into your bones for a moment. We live in an age of unprecedented access to information, technology, and opportunity, yet something strange is happening. The average has become sacred, the ordinary has become the goal, and those who dare to rise above are met not with celebration, but with subtle yet relentless resistance. This is not an accident, this is architecture, and understanding how this invisible prison was built is the first step toward escaping it. Throughout history, societies have always needed a degree of conformity to function. Rules, norms, and shared expectations create the fabric that holds communities together. But somewhere along the way, a dangerous mutation occurred. What began as necessary, social cohesion, transformed into something far more sinister, a systematic protection of mediocrity disguised as equality, fairness, and social harmony. The ancient philosophers understood this danger intimately. Aristotle spoke of the golden mean, but he never suggested that excellence should be sacrificed at the altar of average. Nietzsche warned us about the herd mentality, the way masses would inevitably drag down the exceptional to feel comfortable in their own limitations. And yet here we are, centuries later, living in precisely the world these thinkers feared. Consider the modern workplace. The structures are designed not to elevate the brilliant, but to manage them. Performance reviews that cap recognition, salary bands that punish exceptional output, team dynamics that reward consensus over innovation. The person who arrives early, stays late, and produces twice the results of their colleagues does not receive twice the reward. Instead, they are given more work, subtle resentment from peers, and the unspoken message that their excellence makes others uncomfortable. The system whispers, be good, but not too good. Stand out, but not too much. Succeed, but only within acceptable parameters. This protection of mediocrity extends far beyond the office walls. It permeates our educational institutions, where standardized testing creates standardized minds, where the gifted child is told to slow down so others can catch up, where creativity is systematically replaced with compliance and critical thinking gives way to memorization of approved answers. The message is clear from childhood. Your value lies not in what you can become, but in how well you can conform to what already exists. But why? Why would any society actively work against its own potential for greatness? The answer lies in understanding power and its preservation. Mediocrity is predictable. Mediocrity is manageable. Mediocrity does not question, does not challenge, does not threaten the established order. An army of average performers will show up, follow instructions, consume products, and never ask the dangerous questions that might unravel the carefully constructed illusions that keep the machinery running. Excellence, on the other hand, is inherently disruptive. The excellent mind sees through pretense. The excellent spirit refuses to accept arbitrary limitations. The excellent individual becomes a mirror that reflects the inadequacy of systems built on compromise rather than truth. Have you ever wondered why your greatest ideas were met with the most resistance? Why your moments of genuine inspiration seem to trigger discomfort in those around you? The psychological mechanisms that protect mediocrity are as ancient as humanity itself, but they have been refined and weaponized in the modern age. Social comparison theory tells us that humans constantly evaluate themselves against others. When someone rises above the average, they do not just succeed for themselves, they inadvertently expose the gap between what is and what could be. This creates cognitive dissonance in observers, an uncomfortable tension that can only be resolved in two ways: either by rising to meet the new standard or by pulling the exceptional back down to the comfortable average. Guess which option requires less effort? This is where the crabs in a bucket phenomenon becomes devastatingly relevant. Place a single crab in a bucket and it will climb out. Place multiple crabs together and none will escape, because each time one begins to rise, the others will pull it back down. This is not malice, this is not conscious conspiracy. This is simply the unconscious reflex of mediocrity protecting itself from the threat of being exposed. And modern social structures have perfected the bucket. Think about social media, the great democratizer, the platform where anyone can have a voice. Yet what do we see? Algorithms that reward outrage over insight, viral content that celebrates the lowest common denominator, the destruction of nuance in favor of hot takes and quick reactions. Those who speak profound truths are drowned out by those who speak comfortable lies. The system does not amplify excellence. It amplifies engagement, and nothing engages the masses more than content that validates their existing beliefs and protects them from the discomfort of growth. You have felt this, haven't you? That strange sensation when you share something meaningful, something that took courage to express, only to watch it disappear into the void while superficial content flourishes. That quiet shame you were taught to feel for wanting more, for dreaming bigger, for refusing to accept that this is all there is. That voice in your head, which is not really your voice at all, but the internalized voice of a system that needs you small, telling you to be realistic, to lower your expectations, to remember your place. If this resonates with something deep within you, imagine what comes next. Subscribe now so you do not miss the continuation of this journey. The protection of mediocrity operates through several interconnected mechanisms that most people never recognize. The first is the standardization of aspiration. Through media, advertising, and social conditioning, we are given a template for acceptable success. The stable job, the modest home, the comfortable retirement. These are not inherently bad goals, but they are suspiciously uniform, suspiciously manageable, suspiciously convenient for maintaining the status quo. The person who aspires to transform their industry, to create revolutionary art, to live according to their own design, this person is labeled as unrealistic at best, dangerous at worst. The second mechanism is the weaponization of empathy. We are taught that pursuing excellence is somehow selfish, that standing out is a form of aggression against those who choose not to. The logic is twisted but effective. If you succeed dramatically, you make others feel bad about themselves, and therefore you are responsible for their discomfort. This perverted compassion keeps countless individuals locked in lives far smaller than their potential. Not because they lack ability, but because they have been morally guilted into self-limitation. The third mechanism is the economic architecture itself. Consumer capitalism does not want producers. It wants consumers. It does not want creators. It wants audiences. It does not want awakened minds questioning the necessity of endless acquisition. It wants sleeping souls endlessly acquiring. The excellent individual who realizes they need less, who finds fulfillment in creation rather than consumption, who builds rather than buys, this individual is an economic threat. And so the system perpetually manufactures desires, perpetually creates problems that only products can solve, perpetually keeps people on the hedonic treadmill where they are too exhausted to notice they are running nowhere. But here is what they do not want you to understand. The cage is made of paper. The chains are made of belief. And the moment you truly see the architecture for what it is, you have already begun to transcend it. The Stoics knew this truth intimately. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the ancient world, spent his nights writing reminders to himself that external circumstances hold no power over the inner citadel of the mind. Epictetus, who spent years as a literal slave, taught that true freedom exists in recognizing what is within our control and releasing attachment to everything else. These were not abstract philosophies. They were technologies of liberation, tools for escaping the invisible prisons that societies construct around human potential. The Buddhist traditions speak of Maya, the grand illusion that keeps consciousness trapped in suffering and limitation. The Great Awakening is not about gaining something new, but about seeing through what was always false. And this is precisely what the protection of mediocrity works so desperately to prevent. The moment of clear seeing, when you realize that the rules you have been following were written by people who benefit from your compliance. But there is a secret still more profound that few ever discover. The system's greatest trick was not convincing you that mediocrity is acceptable. It was convincing you that excellence is external, that success is measured in metrics designed by others, that your worth is determined by comparison to standards you never chose. The deepest liberation comes from realizing that true excellence has nothing to do with outperforming others and everything to do with fully expressing what you uniquely are. When you stop trying to be better than others and start trying to be fully yourself, you step outside the game entirely. You become incomparable, and the system has no mechanism for handling the incomparable. Rumi wrote, "You were born with wings. Why prefer to crawl through life?" This is not mere poetry, it is diagnosis. We have been systematically taught to forget our wings, to identify with our limitations, to mistake the crawling for the natural state. The protection of mediocrity is ultimately the protection of forgetfulness, the maintenance of a collective amnesia about what human beings are actually capable of when they stop seeking permission to be extraordinary. The path out is deceptively simple. Though not easy, it begins with recognition, seeing the mechanisms clearly, without bitterness or blame, but with piercing honesty. It continues with reclamation, identifying the parts of yourself you abandoned to fit in, the dreams you buried to be acceptable, the truths you silenced to keep the peace. And it culminates in expression, the daily, relentless, sometimes terrifying act of being more fully who you actually are, regardless of how the system responds. You will lose people along this path. Some relationships are built entirely on the foundation of mutual limitation, and when you remove that foundation, they collapse. You will face resistance, both external and internal. The voices that kept you small will not fall silent immediately. They will rage and bargain and plead before they finally fade. But you will also discover something that makes every sacrifice worthwhile, the experience of being genuinely alive, of looking in the mirror and recognizing the person looking back, of knowing that your brief time in this existence was spent in expansion rather than contraction. The world does not need more comfortable people living forgettable lives. It needs those who have broken the trance, who have remembered their wings, who have chosen the difficult freedom of excellence over the easy imprisonment of average. It needs you, not the version of you that society approved, but the version that terrifies you with its magnitude. This is your invitation, not to be better than others, but to be true to yourself, not to defeat the system, but to transcend the need for its approval, not to wage war against mediocrity out there, but to refuse its residence in here, in the only domain that ever truly belonged to you. The cage door has always been open. The question is whether you are finally ready to walk through. If these words have stirred something in you, if you feel that fire of recognition burning through the fog of conditioning, do not let this moment pass unmarked. Like this video, leave a comment sharing what insight struck you most deeply, and subscribe to join a community of those who refuse to sleep through their own lives. Share this with someone you know who needs to hear it. Sometimes a single message, arriving at the right moment, can change the entire trajectory of a soul. The revolution is not coming. The revolution is remembering, and it begins now.